The smell of garlic bread and pot roast filled the air as I sat down on the old white wooden chair in the kitchen I once called home. The room looked the same: faded floral curtains, the hum of the fridge, soft light bouncing off the yellow-tiled floor. But something in the air felt different. My parents, Thomas and Elaine, sat across from me, flanked by my younger twin brothers, Adam and Caleb. Their faces were unreadable, but Adam's slight smirk gave away a hint of smugness. Caleb leaned back with an air of confidence that didn't sit right. I hadn't even touched my food when my mother cleared her throat and looked me in the eye. "Rachel," she began, her voice soft but rehearsed. "We wanted to tell you something important, something we've been working on." A knot formed in my stomach. I set my fork down slowly, bracing myself. Thomas nodded, avoiding my gaze. "We've finalized our will, and we thought it was better if you heard it from us directly." The words hit me like a cold wave. Elaine's hands were folded neatly in her lap, her fingers tightening slightly around her napkin. "We've decided," she said carefully, "that everything will go to Adam and Caleb. The house, the beach condo, the savings, all of it." I blinked, thinking I had misheard. "What?" I managed to say, barely above a whisper. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Yeah, they're leaving everything to us," he said casually, like he was talking about the weather. "You're not in the will." I looked at my parents, searching their faces for any sign of hesitation, any sliver of doubt. There was none. My mother simply gave a small, firm nod. "You have a good job, Rachel, a stable income. But your brothers, they're still figuring things out. They need the help more." I could feel the blood draining from my face. Years of memories, of helping them, sacrificing for them, flashed in my mind like sparks in the dark. Mortgage payments, medical bills, support when Adam crashed his first car, rent when Caleb dropped out of college. I had always been there. And now I was being left out like I never mattered. So after everything I've done, I don't deserve anything. My voice cracked despite my effort to stay composed. Elaine's expression shifted, her disappointment palpable. "You always make things about money. It's not about the money," I said quietly, holding back tears. "It's about respect. It's about fairness. I've always shown up for this family." Adam chuckled. "No one forced you to help. You just loved playing the hero," Caleb added, smirking. "Or maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you the way they love us." Their words hit me harder than I expected. I turned once more to my parents, hoping for correction, for a reprimand. But they stayed silent. And in that silence, something inside me broke. I took a slow, steadying breath, the weight of betrayal settling in. "If that's your decision," I said, rising to my feet, "then I have one of my own." My hands trembled slightly as I pushed back the chair. The legs scraped against the floor with a screech that cut through the silence like a blade. Adam raised an eyebrow, smugness still dancing in his expression. "What's your big decision, Rachel?" he asked mockingly. I looked at each of them, my parents, my brothers, and realized something that both stunned and liberated me. No one in that room expected me to walk away. They had taken my loyalty for granted for so long that they assumed I'd just keep giving, keep funding, keep absorbing the pain with a smile. "Not this time. From now on," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing in my chest. "Don't expect anything from me." Elaine's eyes widened slightly. "Rachel," but I was already walking out, heart pounding, each step heavier than the last. The scent of garlic bread and pot roast, once warm and comforting, now clung to me like a bitter perfume. No one followed. No one called my name. I opened the front door, stepped out into the cool night, and heard it click shut behind me. That sound was quieter than I expected, but it was the loudest goodbye I had ever heard. I didn't turn on the radio as I drove home. The silence felt like a cocoon, one I needed desperately. My mind reeled with memories, birthdays I had planned for my brothers, hospital bills I had paid without hesitation, the countless times I said I'm fine after wiring money for emergencies that weren't mine. Why was I surprised? Hadn't I always known deep down that to them I was less of a daughter and more of a utility? Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, still in disbelief. I opened my banking app, and there it was, clear as daylight. The numbers that defined my so-called role in the family. $1,900 a month to my parents to help cover the mortgage. Another $1,200 spread across both Adam and Caleb for their needs. I stared at the recurring transfers. This was what they called success. My financial stability became their excuse to bleed me dry. But they made their decision tonight. They didn't need me. I hovered my finger over the automatic payment tab. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then I tapped cancel. A message appeared. Recurring payments successfully stopped. A wave of emotion surged through me. Not just anger and sadness, but something else. Relief. Real, palpable, breathtaking relief. Like putting down a weight I didn't even know I was still carrying. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, revisiting every sacrifice I had made, every late shift I worked, every trip I didn't take, every dream deferred in the name of family. And now, when I asked for nothing but a sliver of acknowledgement, they gave me silence. Cold, deafening silence. But I had made my choice. And for once, it was for me. The next morning, my phone lit up with relentless calls before the sun had even fully risen. I didn't need to check the screen. I already knew who it was. I let it ring, over and over, until the buzzing became white noise in the background of my quiet apartment. Eventually, I picked up. "Rachel," my mother's voice came through sharp, rushed, and tinged with practiced concern. "Did you cancel this month's payment?" I took a deep breath, grounding myself. "Yes, Mom, I did. Because I finally realized something. I don't have to do this anymore." There was a pause, just long enough to register surprise. Then came the disappointment, cold and familiar. "Family supports each other," she said sternly. "We rely on that money for the bills. How could you be so selfish?" My jaw clenched. "Mom, family only seems to matter to you when I'm the one paying for everything. For years I gave and gave, and never once did any of you stop to ask how I was doing." Her voice rose. "You're being ungrateful. We raised you, Rachel. We sacrificed so much for you." I let out a humorless laugh. "Sacrificed? I've been paying your mortgage for 8 years. Covered Adam's tuition every time he changed majors. Bought Caleb a car so he could pretend to be a content creator. I've done more for this family than anyone." She tried to cut in, but I didn't stop. The floodgates were open now. "If money really doesn't matter like you all say, then go ask Adam and Caleb to take care of you for once." Silence stretched on the other end of the line. I could almost picture her face. Shocked, frustrated, scrambling for a way to twist the narrative. "This isn't the Rachel I raised," she finally said, her tone colder now. "You've changed." "No, Mom," I replied, my voice quiet but unwavering. "You just never saw me. This is who I've always been. You just liked me better when I stayed quiet and kept paying your bills." I ended the call before she could respond. I stood in the middle of my apartment, the silence afterward echoing louder than the conversation itself. A hollow space opened in my chest. Not grief, not guilt, but a kind of emptiness I couldn't quite name. Not sadness for what I lost, but for what I had convinced myself was love. More messages followed. Texts from Adam and Caleb. "You're being ridiculous. You'll regret this. Don't expect to be part of this family anymore." I read each one, their words cutting deep, not because they were harsh, but because they were expected. They weren't even mad that I was hurt. They were mad that I stopped being useful. For the first time in my life, I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone. I walked to the balcony, the chill of the morning air brushing against my skin, waking up something inside me. Something stronger. Something freer. I wasn't their provider anymore. I wasn't their ATM, and maybe, just maybe, I was finally my own person. 3 days passed in uneasy silence until a single message shattered it. "Family meeting. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Don't be late." It was from my mother. No explanation. No apology. Just a demand, as if nothing had happened. For a moment, I hovered over the message, considering ignoring it. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "What if this is different? What if they finally want to listen?" That hope, fragile and foolish, was still alive in me. So I went. As I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, my stomach tightened. The porch light cast long shadows across the lawn. Everything looked the same, but I didn't feel like I belonged here anymore. Inside, the tension hit like a wall. Adam and Caleb were already seated on the couch, arms crossed, their expressions carved from stone. My father stood near the fireplace, hands in his pockets. My mother sat in her favorite armchair, eyes red-rimmed, but her posture stiff, like she'd rehearsed the moment 100 times. I hadn't even sat down before she began. "Rachel, I don't understand you anymore," she said, voice trembling. "How far are you willing to go to destroy this family?" My heart sank. So this was what the meeting was for. Not healing, not understanding. Just another way to guilt me back into obedience. "What are you talking about?" I asked, genuinely stunned. My father stepped in, voice low but firm. "You've put us in a serious financial crisis. If you keep being this stubborn, your mother's going to fall apart." I stared at him in disbelief. "So now I'm the reason she's tired? What about the last 10 years? When I worked overtime, skipped vacations, and covered all your bills? Wasn't she fine then?" Adam scoffed. "You're always making things about money, Rachel. You act like the world revolves around your checkbook." Caleb leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Come on. You have a high-paying job. You live in the city. You're doing fine. Why are you acting like we owe you something?" Their words sliced through me, each sentence a reminder that they would never see the truth, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm inside me. "If this is why you called me here," I said, "to manipulate me back into paying for everything, you've wasted your time. I'm not coming back." My mother blinked. "What did you just say?" I stood up, looking around the room one last time. "I have done everything I could to be a part of this family. But if my worth to you is only measured in money, then I don't need this kind of love." No one moved. No one tried to stop me. The silence was louder than any scream. I walked to the door with a calm I didn't expect, opened it, and stepped into the night. And this time, I didn't look back. 2 nights later, I returned home late after working on a tight project deadline. My apartment building stood quiet, the hallway dim and still. But as I approached my front door, I stopped cold. Something was wrong. The entire doorframe had been sealed shut with a thick layer of hardened gray industrial foam, stuffed into every crevice around the door, over the handle, even along the edges. I reached out, pressing my fingers against it. Solid. cold, intentional. My heart began to race. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't random vandalism. This was someone sending a message. I took a step back, breathing hard. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the hallway security camera feed. Fast-forwarding through the footage, my pulse quickened until it stopped completely. There he was, Caleb. Hoodie pulled over his head, a baseball cap low over his face. But his posture, his build, the way he moved, all unmistakable. He smirked slightly as he sprayed the foam with slow, deliberate precision, sealing me out of my own home. I felt my hands tremble. Not with fear, but with rage. The kind of rage that rises from betrayal so personal, so petty, it steals your breath. I didn't hesitate. I called the police. When the officers arrived, I showed them the footage. One of them, a tall woman with a calm voice, watched the video, then looked at me. "Do you want to press charges?" I hesitated for only a second. My old self, the one desperate to keep the peace, would have said no, but not anymore. "Yes," I said. "I want him held accountable." The next morning, my phone rang again. I didn't recognize the number, but answered anyway. My father's voice cut through with immediate fury. "Rachel, what the hell are you doing? Your brother was called in by the police." I stayed calm. "Because he vandalized my apartment." "He's your brother," my dad snapped. "You don't do that to family." "No, Dad," I replied coldly. "Family doesn't seal your door shut to punish you for saying no." There was a pause. Then his voice dropped. "How much do you want to drop the charges?" I didn't even flinch. $3,000 for damages and a new security system. He exploded. "How could you extort your own brother like this?" "It's not extortion," I said flatly. "It's called consequences." Later that day, I received the transfer. Along with it came a bitter message. "Don't ever come near this family again." I stared at it, waiting for a wave of sadness or guilt. But there was nothing, just a quiet, clean acceptance. A final severing of whatever strings were left. They were no longer my problem. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee in silence, a notification lit up my phone. It was from my cousin, Elise, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Is it true? People are saying you abandoned your parents, that you're leaving them, with nothing." My stomach tightened. A second message came in from someone else. "How could you do that to your own family after everything they've done for you?" Confused and unsettled, I opened social media, and there it was. A long public Facebook post written by my mother. In it, she painted a picture of me as a selfish, ungrateful daughter. She wrote that I had cut off support and turned my back on her and my father in their time of need. That Adam and Caleb were struggling to get by, while I lived comfortably and heartlessly ignored their pain. The comments were a flood of sympathy for them. People I barely knew chimed in with pity and praise. So sad. Some children let money poison their hearts. No one should forget where they come from. Your parents sacrificed so much. They deserve better. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew about the mortgage I had paid for 8 years, the tuition checks, the emergency transfers, the car Caleb bought with my money to boost his influencer image. And they definitely didn't know that he vandalized my apartment just days ago. They only knew the version my mother crafted. A martyr, a loving parent betrayed by her successful but heartless daughter. For a moment, I just sat there, completely still, phone in hand, heart heavy. The lies weren't even the worst part. It was the realization that they would rather destroy my reputation than admit the truth. I could have ignored it. I could have let it pass. But something in me had shifted. I had stayed quiet for too long. If they wanted to make this public, then so would I. I opened my app, tapped New Post, and I began to write. I told the story they refused to tell. The $1 or $1,900 a month I'd been sending for years. The $200 a month split between Adam and Caleb. The countless bills, vacations missed, and mental exhaustion they never acknowledged the vandalism. The police report. The emotional manipulation. And I ended it with this. I didn't turn my back on my family. I simply stopped being their ATM. I chose to stand up for myself. I hit post. Within hours, the reaction was electric. Some relatives reached out privately, shocked, supportive, even apologetic. One aunt said, "We never knew you were the one holding everything together." Another messaged, "Your mother's version never made sense. Thank you for telling the truth." For the first time, I wasn't alone in my truth, and my silence was over. My phone rang again that evening. I knew the number before I even looked. It was her. I hesitated, then answered. "Rachel, what the hell did you just do?" My mother's voice exploded through the speaker, seething with rage. "How dare you humiliate this family like that?" I didn't flinch. I stayed calm. "I told the truth, Mom. The version you left out when you tried to turn everyone against me." She was breathless, grasping for control. "Your father hasn't left the house all day. Do you even care what this is doing to him? What about your brothers? Adam and Caleb are devastated." My grip on the phone tightened. Did they care? What they were doing to me when they laughed at me, humiliated me, used me like a bank account, and sealed my apartment door shut like I was some stranger. Did you care when I was working overtime, sending you thousands every month, while all I got in return was silence and entitlement? She went quiet for a beat, but only to reload. "You're destroying this family," she spat. "No, Mom," I said firmly. "You destroyed this family when you decided love had a price tag, and that I was only worthy when I was paying it." There was a long silence. Then, cold as ice, she delivered the final blow. "If you go down this road, don't expect to come back. You are no longer part of this family." I stared at the floor, that sentence echoing like a closing door. But this time it didn't crush me. It freed me. "I know," I whispered, and I hung up. No tears came. No wave of regret, just a strange, powerful sense of stillness, like I had finally stepped out of the storm. That call was the last time I ever heard her voice. After my post, everything went silent. No more angry messages from Adam. No more calls from my father. Not even one sarcastic jab from Caleb. It was as if I had been erased from the family, like I never existed. But I didn't feel guilty anymore. I felt relieved. For the first time in years, my evenings were my own. I wasn't spending them fielding desperate texts or calculating how much I could afford to send without draining myself. I wasn't canceling vacations or skipping dinners out to save them, again. Instead, I threw myself into my work. I led a major project from start to finish with total focus. I poured my energy into something that gave back, instead of something that constantly took, and it paid off. 2 months later, I stood in my new office, corner view, floor-to-ceiling windows, a nameplate on the door that read, Rachel Bennett, Director of Product Strategy. For once, I wasn't just proud of what I had built. I was allowed to be. I didn't owe it to anyone else. And for the first time, I could finally enjoy it. For me. The promotion should have been enough. But there was something else I had promised myself a long time ago. Something I had always put on hold. Travel. Not for business, not for family emergencies, just for me. So I did it. I booked a ticket to Italy. For years I told myself I couldn't justify spending that kind of money, not when there were bills to cover, mortgages to patch up, brothers to rescue. But now, there was no one left to guilt me into shrinking my life. When the plane touched down in Florence, something shifted in me. The cobblestone streets, the scent of espresso wafting from cafes, the warm terracotta rooftops glowing in the afternoon sun, it all felt surreal. Like stepping into a painting, or maybe, finally, into my own life. I wandered through narrow alleyways with no destination. I stood in silent awe at the Uffizi Gallery, staring up at Botticelli's Birth of Venus. I ate the freshest pasta I'd ever tasted slowly, without checking my phone every 5 minutes in case someone from home needed something. I wasn't Rachel, the provider, anymore. I was just Rachel. One afternoon, while sitting at a cafe near Piazza della Signoria, sipping a cappuccino and journaling, a warm voice broke through the buzz of the crowd. "You look like someone who's fallen in love with this city." I looked up. He had sandy brown hair, a sun-softened tan, and a calm, easy smile. He wore a linen shirt, slightly wrinkled, and carried a camera strapped around his shoulder. "I think I have," I replied, smiling back. "I'm Alex," he said, pulling out the chair across from me without waiting for an invitation. "Third time here, couldn't stay away." We talked for over an hour. He was from New York, worked in interior design, and had a deep love for European architecture. His voice was smooth, steady, sometimes laced with dry humor that made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years, freely, without weight. He didn't ask about my family. He didn't pry. He just sat with me, shared stories about cities and ceilings and the magic of late-night gelato. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to explain my existence or justify my peace. The next few days passed like a dream. We walked along the Arno River at sunset, tasted wine in hidden courtyards, and lingered in bookstores that smelled like old paper and possibilities. One evening, while watching the skyline glow from a rooftop terrace, Alex turned to me and said, "I don't know what your story is, but I hope you know. You seem like someone finally choosing herself." I looked out over the city and smiled. I am. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't ashamed of that. When I returned to the US, I wasn't the same person who had left. The trip to Italy hadn't just refreshed me, it had transformed me. The old version of myself, the one who calculated her worth by how much she gave away, was gone. I stepped back into my life with a new lens, one that didn't blur my needs in the name of obligation. Work thrived. I joined a Sunday yoga class. I hosted casual dinners with new friends I'd met at art galleries and networking events. And for the first time in years, my calendar wasn't dictated by guilt or emergency texts from my family. Then, one quiet morning as I brewed coffee, my phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Linda, my mother's cousin. "Rachel, I know you don't care about the family anymore, but your parents aren't doing well. Your father's working night shifts at a warehouse and your mother's cleaning houses by the hour. They look exhausted." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Part of me wanted to feel something, pity, maybe, regret. But all I felt was clarity. They had made their choices. When I was paying their mortgage, covering bills, sacrificing my own needs, they didn't stop. Not once did they ask if I was tired. Not once did they say thank you. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a lifeline they expected would never fray. Now that I had stepped away, they were finally facing the reality I had shielded them from for over a decade. A few days later, a friend forwarded me a post. It was about Adam. He had lost his job due to poor performance. Caleb was still trying to be a social media personality, posting shirtless workout routines and life advice to an audience that was shrinking by the day. I wasn't surprised. They had spent their lives leaning on the illusion of support, never learning how to stand on their own. But I had. Christmas came. And for the first time, I didn't feel the ache I thought I would. I thought I'd miss the traditions, the noise, the tree that always leaned a little to the left in our parents' living room, but I didn't. Instead, I hosted a small gathering at my apartment. My living room glowed with soft white lights. Friends filled the space with laughter and warmth. Aunt Daisy came early with a box of homemade cookies and a gentle hug. "I'm proud of you, Rachel," she whispered as she stepped inside. I smiled, genuinely. "You're the only person in the family who's ever said that." She looked at me, her eyes soft. "I just wish they had seen your worth before it was too late." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That night, I laughed more than I had. In years. No forced smiles. No obligation. Just peace. As midnight struck, I stood on my balcony, a glass of wine in hand, watching the city lights twinkle across the skyline. And for the first time, I felt something I had chased for so long. Wholeness. I sat in my armchair, the city lights reflecting softly against the window pane. Outside, cars moved along the avenue, their headlights glowing like fireflies in the night. But inside my apartment, everything was still, quiet, safe. For so long, I had believed that family meant sacrifice, that love had to come with struggle, that if I just gave enough, money, time, pieces of myself, they would eventually see my worth, that they would accept me, love me, choose me. But the truth was, never that complicated. The truth was that they didn't value me unless I was useful, and when I stopped being useful, I became disposable. That realization should have broken me. But instead, it liberated me. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love without conditions, by respect without demands, and by the people who show up for you even when you have nothing to give. Thomas, Elaine, Adam, and Caleb never did. When they cut me out of the will, they thought they were making a statement, that I wasn't worthy of their legacy. What they didn't realize was that their decision didn't break me. It set me free. Was no longer the overworked, guilt-ridden daughter hiding behind automatic bank transfers and forced holiday smiles. I was a woman who had reclaimed her time, her peace, and her voice. Now, I spend my mornings in quiet reflection, sometimes sipping coffee on my balcony, watching the sunrise without having to brace for a phone call filled with need. I invest in friendships that nurture me. I laugh, I rest, I create. I live for me, and I love, freely. Not because it's owed, but because it's real. I still think about them sometimes. Not out of longing, but out of clarity. I hope that one day they find the strength to face themselves, to become whole on their own. But I've learned that it's no longer my job to rescue them. That chapter has closed. Instead, I choose this life, the one I've built. The one I wake up to every morning, knowing that I no longer owe my silence, my labor, or my love to people who never earned it. My phone sits quietly on the table now. No missed calls, no guilt-laced messages, just peace. And in that peace, I've found something I never thought I could claim: freedom.